Welcome to today's session, everyone. We thank you for being here. I'm thrilled to have George Chamoun with us to dive deep into the fascinating world of AI implementation and compliance. George, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to be here.
Very good. I've been super excited for this session. AI is a big deal. Everybody's talking about it. Everyone's trying to implement it in various ways. You have a strategy for big companies. But before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about your role at Fairo and what do you do? What's your day-to-day take? What's it like?
Absolutely. So, Fairo is a relatively new company. I founded it in 2022 and we took it live in 2023 with our product. My day to day right now is basically about understanding everything I can about how we can service our customers towards implementing AI responsibly. So that means understanding what different regulations are coming out from different governments, what are the best risk management frameworks that we can implement, and how do those help organizations uphold ethical and societal principles. I think for an organization like Fairo, what we really want to offer is a long-term solution for companies that's going to benefit not only their investment into AI technology, but also the impact on society and the world of what the implications of their AI technology is.
And a little bit, can you tell us a little about Fairo? What does it do? What is
Yeah,
its main focus?
absolutely. Yeah, so Faro is a platform that provides you with a holistic and central point of control for all of your AI systems. We consider ourselves a AI visibility and compliance platform. So what the visibility part means is that with Faro, you will have insight into all of your different AI initiatives. So your use cases, who's using them, what the impacts are. This could be financial, this could be risks. All of that is centralized in our tool. And then from a compliance standpoint, just reporting on your AI use cases is one thing. To make sure that they are up to date with the latest standards, with the latest regulations, that all of the components of your AI system are compliant with those regulations and with those frameworks. We help facilitate that process so that you can continue to innovate within your organization while also managing risk, while also following the law.
That's great to hear about your role. Super excited here. We're going to hear more about your company. A little bit of fun facts to cover here with you, George. While you're not doing AI implementations or helping companies become more compliant using AI, what's a hobby that you have that keeps you going, energized, gives you more excitement in your day?
Well, I guess quite literally, I enjoy cooking, right? So that gives me energy. Well, the eating after you're done
Yeah.
with it. I'd say in terms of other activities, I have a dog. I love to go walking outdoors with him, and then I've been doing cold plunge lately. The past, I don't know, 6 months. That's a pretty good way to get the blood flowing and clear your head.
Where'd you do your last cold plunge?
At the gym.
Oh, the gym.
So not I'm not fortunate. I know you said you live in Idaho, right? So you probably have access to a lot of good fresh bodies of water. I'm in the city here in Boston, so there's a couple of ponds, but I'm not ready to try that yet. My wife's hometown, she has a nice lake that I've gone into. So that was my last natural one a couple months ago.
Okay. And what's your
Yeah.
strategy to warm up right after the cold plunge? Do you do anything different than just
It depends. If I'm at the gym, I might cheat and go in the sauna for a little bit.
okay?
If it's outside, you kind of just got to tough it out, go home, have a hot drink, maybe walk a little bit.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. I got to
Yeah.
try that. I haven't done that yet. Uh,
Oh, it's good.
now, any favorite books or films that you've seen that have influenced your professional life that you could share with the audience?
Um, I love the historical fiction films. Like I love the 2008 financial crisis movies, like Margin Call or The Big Short or stuff
Uh,
like that. I like that because when we're doing ethics, right, we think about what are the consequences of. I know that's a little cliche to say that, but if we're talking about what's influenced it, I'd say for those definitely.
yeah, those are really good ones, especially what you're
Yeah.
doing. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Everybody gets to know you a little bit better. Now we're going to dive into a little bit about the main core of the podcast that everybody's come to listen to or the webinar. Foundation. Let's start out talking about foundation for AI implementation. Can you start us off by explaining the basic components needed for a successful AI implementation within an
Yeah,
organization?
absolutely. So regardless of whether you're doing a regression model or a large language model, right? Because when we think about AI lately, a lot of the talk is on LLMs, generative AI, these really big multi-billion or even, close to a trillion parameter models now. But there's a lot of AI models that don't have nearly that many parameters. You still need the same components if you want to use them successfully. So what I generally say is that alignment on how the AI is going to be used, what are the use cases for the AI, what business processes are we going to augment or replace. If we understand this, we're going to be in the best place possible. I think a lot of these conversations can be uncomfortable sometimes too, and that results in sort of worse outcomes down the line. There are many people who intend to replace entire job functions or entire jobs with AI technology. Perhaps not being transparent about that might seem like a good idea at first. I think over time, what people are discovering is that understanding how we're going to use this, if it means that a whole group of individuals within the organization are going to have to learn how to use a different tool, or they're going to have to do something else, or some people are going to lose their jobs. If that's the intention of management, that needs to be established up front. And I think this goes for everything. So for me, alignment and transparency on how we plan to do this, that's going to give you the best long-term outcomes. And I think as we talk more, we'll go into see why that's the case.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And that plays such a crucial role into the organization culture. How important
Yeah.
is organization culture in adopting AI? And what cultural shifts have you seen that are needed for them to start getting in the right direction?
Yeah, I think it's perhaps one of the most important things because when you think about AI, right, if it's almost like another member of your organization, it's like another team, right, another group, and your organization has a way of doing things. You have people who are experts in forecasting, right, and when the first AI models came out that could make better forecasts than humans, you had the expert forecasters say, "Oh, okay, what do I do?" But that's kind of a niche job, right? Now you start to think people are talking about using AI in medicine. People are talking about using AI in a whole array of high risk use cases. And culturally, that means that people are going to have to do things differently. I think it means that they're going to have to ensure that the right capacity for how to use the AI and how to develop the AI is there. So going back to just the alignment and the transparency and the collaboration thing, I think sometimes people assume, oh, well, I'll put an AI solution out and that will mean that people have to do less work, but perhaps actually it means that you have to do more, at least at first. When you're adopting that solution, you need to rethink your entire organization and how it works.
And I imagine you've seen a lot of challenges as people have gone through and put together the AI strategy and helped shift the culture a little bit. What are some of these common
Yeah.
challenges companies face when starting their AI journey?
Yeah, a lot of them are very basic, like just like lack of data to solve the problem. You think, oh, I want to do X, Y, or Z. You invest time and resources in planning it, and you discover that you don't have the data. Either it's illegal to use the data, right? You don't have the authorization, or you just can't get it. Or this is the most common one. You have the data, but you don't account for the fact that there's a delay to collecting and cleaning the data. That then by the time you have it, it's actually not relevant in the problem. You see this a lot in the hospital, right? People train a model on retrospective data and they say, oh, I've got a model that works. It can identify whatever, a whole host of diseases. But actually, those data aren't available in the critical time window in the hospital. So that's one example. And then going back to the teams and the individuals, have you really brought in the right team to solve the problem, and have you empowered them to get insights and collaborate with the teams that own the processes that are going to be augmented or replaced? Going back to that alignment aspect before, you'll see it like everything comes back to that. So those are the challenges, right? Cultural, like we talked about, not getting the alignment, not having the right people, and then there's a lot of technical challenges as well. Costs could come into play if you don't have the right data. You have to purchase licenses. There's a lot of things that can go wrong in an AI implementation for sure.
Now, you did mention alignment a lot, but I just want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about the importance of leadership during AI
Yeah,
initiatives, because that is core as well. Can you
yeah.
tell us a little bit about how important is the leadership and the buy-in to get your organization moving towards AI?
I think it's. I don't think it can happen really without them. They're the ones that are going to have to basically encourage different teams to work together. They're going to have to be the ones that say, okay, maybe we created these silos, these departments before. They served us well before. Now we have this AI technology that we want to bring in. We want to pull data from all these different parts of the organization. We want to learn things that we couldn't see before. And now people who are kind of in these different silos are going to have to they're going to have to work together. And they don't have any incentive to do that unless the leadership makes that conscious effort to make a cultural change. And once they've done that, those teams can start to work together on the AI solutions. I think the leadership also needs to make sure that they're continuously checking in on this process of developing and deploying AI, because then we start to get into issues of ethics and responsible AI. Is my AI solution, are my AI use cases, do they uphold the values of my organization? That's a question that the leadership needs to ask and that they need to have a stake in, especially for high risk use cases.
That's a great question. And now tell me a little bit about what you do, because Fairo helps organizations lay down the solid foundation of AI adoption. I imagine you help executives through the questions you just outlined, culture change. What are some of the core capabilities that you help companies with as they're looking to do the AI?
Absolutely. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, we help with that alignment, right? And we have real things that our software provides that will actually do that. Because it's one thing to say, oh, you need to get alignment. It's another thing to say, okay, well, these are the steps you can take. So we actually have those steps. So that could be performing an AI impact assessment, right? Which involves getting stakeholders across the organization to answer different questions about how the AI is to be used, how it's to be developed, who's it for, right? Filling out different questionnaires on what people's thoughts are, getting surveys, getting opinions, centralizing information on use cases and making it as transparent as you can. I understand that certain organizations don't have the benefit of being fully transparent on all their initiatives due to strategic concerns, national security concerns. Like I understand that. However, going back to the leadership thing, I think it is up to them to decide how much of that moat they want to put around the different solutions and know the risks of doing that. So that's another thing that we provide is that risk oversight view. So what Fairo has done is we've studied all the different regulations, we've studied all the different risk management frameworks, all the different impact assessments, and we have created a platform that allows an organization to register their AI use cases and effectively evaluate them against all of those standards. So if you are recording an AI use case in Fairo, by the end of the process that we set forth for you, you will understand the different risks, you will understand the different teams that are involved in it, and you'll be able to track those over time.
So that's great. So you have a strategy implementation session, you said, or a audit, and you have the
So there's an
software.
audit. Yeah. So essentially, what our goal is to prepare your organization for regulatory compliance, which could eventually lead to an audit. Not all systems are requiring a full audit. Not all regulations are requiring a full audit. There are some, which I think we can get to. For the most part, right now, our focus is on helping organizations get insight into their different use cases and what the risks are and what the potential value is of them. And I think that the value that that's going to provide organizations is that they can make better decisions about what AI initiatives they want to invest in, which ones they want to deploy wider, which ones they want to deploy narrower or roll back. And then also understanding that there are a lot of elements of an AI solution that you may not have out of the box as an organization. There are policies and procedures that you ought to implement that you might not have known that you need to. So what we do is we provide the infrastructure to allow you to do that. We give you that dashboard of all of your things AI in your organization, but then you can drill into it and actually get really low level operational insights on, oh, this model is missing lineage for a data set. So we don't know if this model is compliant with, different regulations that restrict data like GDPR, HIPAA, and stuff like that, right? That's a specific example. It could go all the way to, we've invested, X dollars into this AI use case, but the model performance in production is so much worse than what we saw in training that we actually don't want to continue investing in it. We want to roll it back. So there's different elements to this, right? There's compliance system, right? There's also a components of thinking like, oh, an ERP, I have my AI supply chain. I got my data, I got my models, I got my teams. Here's the process it fits into. How do I get a master view of all of that? That's what we're providing.
That sounds great, and we're going to learn more about it through the session. But
Yeah.
so let's talk a little bit about the benefits, right? We talked a little bit about the
Yeah.
strategy. We talked about what you do, how to provide it. You've seen a lot of companies deploy AI. What are some of the top benefits you've seen in enterprises where AI can bring to the organization?
Yeah. So there's really too many to count, right? I'm a big believer that AI has the potential for really great positive impact on the world and on organizations. When we think about generative AI use cases, that's a lot of what's come in the last year and a half. But as I mentioned before, there's other use cases that are more traditional AI ML that are just predictive. They're built basically by discovering relationships between different pieces of data and then making forecasts or doing classification. So that could mean how much do I purchase? How much do I sell? What do I buy? What do I sell? It could be who to treat, what to treat them with. These are all examples of use cases that are predictive. When we look at the generative side, right, we have so many things that weren't available to us just 2 years ago. We can now create automated customer service chatbots that can get you probably 80% of the way there for most problems, probably resolve a good chunk of problems 100% of the way there, allowing you to free up the wait time for people who need to speak to a customer service representative, right? You also have stuff like interactive search and summarization using technology like RAG, like retrieval augmented generation, basically putting a whole corpus of text into a large language model and then allowing it to synthesize and summarize based on user queries. This can speed up processes in research, speed up processes in the legal world, right? Reading large case texts or briefs, things that were very, very time consuming can now be done a lot more quickly. It allows people the opportunity to just focus on adding that human value, that human element. What a lot of people say is, oh, it's not artificial intelligence, it's augmented intelligence. I think when we look at these initial use cases, like the ones I've listed, that's really what we're getting to here. It can help the animator create a sketch. It's not doing the entire animation and giving some ideas that people can look into and review and discuss without having to wait 2 weeks. You can get a lot further down the path on whatever task you're working on just because of the power of the algorithm. So I think there's a lot of great use cases. There's also a lot that hasn't been seen. So I'm excited to see what people come up with.
Yeah, those are some good examples. Now, have you probably seen what are some misconceptions that people commonly have about the benefits of AI?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people think, oh well, AI is going to be a cure-all for the problems of my organization, right? Like if I have some inefficient operations or if I have a division that's really not profitable, that AI is going to solve that for me. I actually think if you were struggling in a certain area of your business, you want to use AI to solve all your problems, you may end up worse than you were before. Those cultural issues that may be causing problems for you, they AI may they may not be a good environment for developing a successful AI solution. You may find that you're over automating certain parts of your pipeline, and that frankly you'd be better off just trying to create that culture that we discussed earlier to develop the AI, and then you can go in there. So I think the cure-all is a really, really big misconception. I also think people got to remember we're in the earliest days of generative AI here. ChatGPT 3.5 was really cool because it was smart enough to be a really cool party trick and to have certain very narrow business use cases, but it wasn't smart enough to kind of trick us into thinking it was AGI. So we weren't as frustrated with it. When 4 comes out, right, now it's on this level where it's like, okay, it's smart enough that we're actually annoyed that it can't do more. So I think patience, right? This is not the end. This is just the beginning.
Yeah, and a little bit. Let's touch a little bit on, because this is so core to your product, AI influencing decision making process within an organization. Um,
Yeah.
Now that you're having data together, people are using reports, building analysis with AI. What impacts AI having in this decision making process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, there's a couple. Of course, you have the benefits, which is that people can make more informed decisions more quickly, or they can, in the same amount of time, make a decision that's backed by more data. And if that data is good, right? If the AI has done its job, then those decisions should, in theory, be better. Just to talk a little bit about some of the risks, over reliance on AI for decision making could be problematic for organizations that haven't thoroughly tested it. If, for some of the examples that I brought up earlier, if you're using AI to provide you a research summary, or if you're using it to do an analysis of a legal brief, how often are you checking that to make sure that it's comprehensive, that the summary is accurate, that it can be trusted? I know that there was some examples in New York City that come out saying, okay, we have this AI, it helps walk people through the housing code. People would say, all right, what do I need to do to rent my apartment? It would give them like 3 out of 4 or 6 out of 10 things they had to do. So it's like, okay, that's neat. It scanned and it got a 60% accuracy rate. The fines associated with missing one of those things could put somebody out of business. So just making sure that when we think about the decisions that we're taking as a result of the outputs of AI, that we've taken the time to understand what the implications are for a success or a failure of that model.
Now, how does Faro ensure that we get to realize these benefits and
Yeah.
overcome these risks? What's something that your product does today?
Yeah. We're making sure that you ask the right questions and that you have the right policies and procedures in place. So we're taking a look at your AI use case and we're saying, okay, for an AI use case of this nature, it could be image classification, customer service, right? There's categories of use cases. What elements of an AI risk management framework are applicable? And then we create that framework for you to work through with your organization to define the policies, to define the procedures, to get the alignment by asking the questions, recording the response, summarizing through charts, through tables, through graphs, and then making sure that your organization over time can continue to track the risks and mitigate them through suggested actions. And some of these actions we've derived from the risk management frameworks, from the best practices set by the standard setting body, and then we make it easy for you to comply. So if you are building an algorithm and you're using code to do that, within your code, you can put a couple lines that make an API call to our system, and then we can check to make sure that the model that you're building is following the rules that your organization has set. They could say you need to use data from a certain source. They could say that you need to have certain performance metrics before you deploy to production. We can check all of that. So not only are we helping establish the framework for how you build AI successfully, coming from all of the different standard setting organizations, laws, best practices, we're also facilitating the compliance. We're making it easy to get and record those questionnaire answers, right? We're making it really easy for you to summarize and synthesize your test results and make decisions on them. So there's a lot of different components that we have to consider from an AI system, but we try to make it as easy as possible for the organization so that they can get the most benefit out of it, that they can ask and answer complicated questions about AI in real time.
Oh, that's great. And I think for those interested so far, we got a couple more sections here, but for sure, George, where can they go to get a demo? Because I'm sure people are
Yeah,
itching at this
absolutely.
point to say, look, I want to get a demo out of this. Can you point them to do that?
Absolutely.
And we'll do it also in the end.
Yeah, so you can go on to Pharaoh.ai, which is our website, and you can book a demo from there. You can also find me on LinkedIn. My name is George Chamoun. Pictures of me with mountains behind me, and you can book a demo from there.
Perfect. So we talked about the benefits, we talked about the strategy. Let's talk about the risks a little because this
Yeah.
is probably one of the areas that executives are fearing, but they don't know
Yeah.
completely all the risks and how to mitigate them. So, what are the primary risks associated with AI projects today?
Yeah, so AI projects, sort of like any software project or any project that uses data, they carry privacy risks. And I like to start off with that because I want to say, okay, you actually have a framework in place that could be moved to to use with AI that you've already implemented for data privacy. You may have SOC 2, you may have high trust, right? Those are frameworks that you implemented to comply with different laws, laws in Europe, laws in the United States, laws across the world. Think about AI, right? Understanding the different risks is similar to how we understand it for data privacy and IT security. The fines for a large language model leaking PHI would be the same ones that are applicable to your organization now. The thing is with AI that makes it different is that it's a little bit more nuanced about how we evaluate the risk. Because when you're thinking about data that's stored in a vector database, right, which is the type of database that stores the weights for a language model, it's not in a human readable format. So when the language model creates an output, you have to say, okay, how similar is this to the underlying data source? So there's a whole set of security policy and mathematical study on this concept called differential privacy, right? And organizations and NIST and different standard setting bodies are trying to figure out how do we tackle this. So that's one example is the data privacy risk. And just to say that with AI, like I said, it's similar to what you've seen before. It's just a little bit more nuanced in how you tackle it, which is why companies like Fairo exist, is to help you handle that nuance, right? You also have the risk of the use of the AI system now, because the AI is performing a task or augmenting a task. So the same risk that you would have if somebody doesn't do their job properly, you now have if the AI doesn't do the job properly, right? So there's so many things that can happen if AI isn't doing its job properly. You can have financial risk, right? Because that job has financial implications, and if it wasn't done properly, then you're losing money. There's also legal risk. If the job is not done properly and you're sued or you're fined, you will end up in a situation where you owe money to impacted parties or to the government. Um, there's ethical risks, right? If you are discriminating against people, if you are doing things that are considered illegal based on regulations that have nothing to do with AI. I mean, I could tell you that Rite Aid is banned from using facial recognition technology for the next 5 years because they were discriminating against people who were coming into their stores, basically saying that black and brown people were shoplifting when they weren't. I mean, these are very, very serious crimes that were committed because somebody didn't take the time to check the AI algorithm, right? United Healthcare also has faced incredibly large fines on the basis of discrimination. So these things they bring risks to the business not only from a financial sense, right? You have damages to impacted parties. You have the government sues you. I also think from the reputational standpoint, it's extremely critical to consider these risks of an AI that isn't behaving appropriately. It could damage your reputation. I mean, the names of the companies that I mentioned, they're people aren't going to forget that because it's we take that very seriously in this country.
Now,
Yeah.
what steps? I mean, those are some big issues. This big risks that executives are facing with these AI implementations. What are some ways that they can mitigate those from happening?
Absolutely. So if the most important thing that I think a company can do is begin to implement the policies and procedures set forth by various standard setting organizations designed to help you mitigate AI risk. So the good news is that lots of very, very smart people for probably the past 10 or 15 years have been working on this problem. Before ChatGPT even came out, many years before, the EU had been working on the AI Act. Microsoft had been working on responsible AI technology, documentation. Same with Google. a lot of private companies and public sector bodies have worked together to create excellent guidelines for this. So what Fairo is doing is saying, okay, we want to give you a software to help you implement those guidelines, right? You can put in a policy and you can put in a procedure to make sure that you're asking the questions, running the tests before that AI gets deployed. Had they done a simple test at Rite Aid to check for discrimination on impacted parties and noticed the disparate impacts, they probably would not have had the issues that they did. It's actually a very simple check. So going back to what I was saying earlier about how Fairo helps, let's just say Rite Aid is working with us. They put in this use case. They say it's a facial recognition use case. Red flags are going to go off all in our system because now, okay, facial recognition, that is a hot button area for disparate impacts. So now we're going to suggest all sorts of tests for them to run, all sorts of questionnaires for them to execute to make sure that they really understand the implication of how this tool is going to be used, how it's going to impact people, how they should be testing it. And I know that had they done that, they would not be in the situation that they are now.
And so you mentioned a lot of implementations. Now, monitoring. I imagine monitoring is core as well for assessing these risks.
Oh, yeah.
What's the importance of this continuous monitoring and evaluating AI risk management?
I mean, I would say that a lot that one of the going back to the misconceptions. I mean, one of the big misconceptions is that once you've kind of deployed an AI algorithm, that the work of the data scientist is done. I actually think that there's more testing that needs to happen after a model is deployed than before. It is the obligation of the company deploying AI to ensure that it is meeting the predetermined acceptance criteria. It's the job of the organization to have that acceptance criteria defined as well, so that as we're using our AI and we're testing it, we understand when we need to update an algorithm, when we need to pull an algorithm, when we need to put a backup plan in place. There's a lot of different things that organizations can and should be doing after deployment to ensure that their users or their organization is having the best experience possible. One example is if I have an algorithm that falls outside of a certain bounds on a performance test, and I know now that I'm losing money with it in production, I also know that there's a cost if I remove it, right? Being able to do that cost benefit analysis is very important for the financial health of the organization. So I would say that having a good plan for what to do after the model is deployed is one of the most important, if not the most important part of the AI strategy.
So we go into a lot about the risks and we talk about steps that companies can take. If you could summarize for us, how does Fairo play into mitigating these risks? What are the capabilities it has? You mentioned some before, but I'd love to summarize it for the audience. And now that we've kind of dove into risk management.
Yeah, absolutely. So Fairo provides that universal point of visibility for all things in the AI system. So all of the data, all of the policies, all of the controls that relate to an AI use case, the regulations, we have that all stored and mapped and centralized. So when you have an AI use case, you don't have to answer these questions 100% yourself in terms of what should I be looking for? What should I be doing? You have to bring the strategy for your business. You have to bring your principles. You have to bring your strategic goals. You have to bring your desires for how you want the AI to use. But but what we're helping with is what questions should you be asking? And then once you answer them, how do you store that information and ensure the compliance with the system? So you're getting that full overview of all those different AI use cases, of all those different risks. And then your team, your data science team, your IT and operations team, they're given the tools to actually implement the policies that you're suggested to create. So through that whole process, we make it as easy as possible for you to build AI use cases that are successful and control the risks without stifling the innovation on the data science team because they don't want to do all the manual documentation and paperwork. We make it very, very easy and pleasant because I come from a data science background. So I wanted to ensure that when a data scientist was complying with an AI governance regulation that they didn't think, oh, this is just a box I have to check. They need the visibility into the system, into the use case, into the implications to say, okay, this is part of my responsibility as a citizen, not only of this company, but of the world, to make sure that I'm building AI in a way that's going to positively impact my organization and the users and society.
No, that for sure. That tool, your tool, adds a lot of value. Um, Going into a little bit about the organizational structure, overall compliance, could you explain a little bit what AI governance involves?
Yeah. So AI governance is that set of processes. It's the procedures, it's the tools that are bringing together all of your different stakeholders, your data scientists, your domain experts, all your different AI actors, we call them, executive leadership team, as we mentioned. We're bringing them together, okay? And we're making sure that AI systems are built in a way that creates value, that does not bring risk to the organization and society, that does not bring risk or harm to the users. We're also making sure that the AI system falls into compliance with any contractual, legal, regulatory requirements at any stage of the AI development lifecycle, from coming up with the idea to retirement after we say we don't want to use this model anymore, we want to replace it, or we want to do a different use case. So AI governance is very holistic. It's multifaceted. It has technical components from data science. It has legal components. It has strategic. It has ethical components. It also has the compliance and implementation side of things, which is, okay, we know what is good. We know what is permissible. We know what to do. Now, how do we do it? Right? And then that's where Fairo comes in, is to say, okay, this is how you do it. This is how you bring the pieces together and coordinate that AI governance practice within the organization.
In regards to like a little bit more specific, what are some key regulations that AI driven organizations need to be aware of as they bring together their governance structure, they add the compliance part. What are some key regulations that you keep up on that they need to be aware of?
Yeah, there's actually a variety. There's a lot, and a lot of them have overlap, and then certain parts that are unique to each of them. So it can be very complicated to keep track of. But I assure you, it's not like if there's 10 regulations, you need to do 10 times the work. There is a lot of overlap. So at the international stage, the most high profile one is the EU AI Act. This is something that has been signed into law in the past month and a half. It's fairly recent, but it's been under development for a while. It categorizes AI risks into about AI systems at about 5 different levels of risk, and depending on what level you fall in, one being no risk, you can kind of do whatever you want. Level 5 being unacceptable, you can't use AI for that use case. Thinking about like police surveillance and stuff like that, right? That's how it works. What's very interesting is that a lot of AI use cases fall into this level 4 category, which stuff like hiring, AI assisted hiring would fall into, certain insurance practices would fall into, a lot of them actually. And for that, you need to do quite a number of things that, to ensure that your AI is compliant. You have to make sure you have a quality management system in place. You have to report certain numbers to the European Union on a regular basis. And if you don't comply with that, you're going to face fines, right, from the EU. That's at the international stage. In the US, the states have mostly let it. So we have New York City, which has a local law for hiring, and that's sort of similar to certain parts of the EU AI Act, in that for the hiring, there's an audit process, but it's not quite as stringent. In Colorado, there's another law that a lot of insurance companies are interested in. It's called SB 21-169, I believe. And that law is basically, it's sort of like an extension of the Civil Rights Act, specific for insurance companies. So it really calls it out. In the US, what we have are a lot of laws that have been around for a while, like the Civil Rights Act, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, the ADA, FTC, Section 5. There's a lot of things that sort of, they're 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, some of these things. They're not really designed for AI, but if AI is discriminating or doing something that they, forbid, then it's prohibited, right? And it's covered. The complicated thing about that is that what you end up with is, okay, now the legal precedent has to be set about the lines of accountability. The courts have to go through, they have to go through trials, they have to actually create a precedent around how this is interpreted in the context of AI. That's why you're seeing a lot of states introducing bills to sort of, okay, this is the letter of the law, and how it just makes that process a lot easier for people to understand how the AI system should be handled in the context of these regulations. So Europe, they've really spelled it out for you. In the U.S., they're working at the state level, and I believe at the federal level, we will see something, but it usually takes a little longer to get there.
And how does Faro help companies stay compliant with these regulations? Because I imagine many of them don't know of all of them, or they do know of them. But what features does Faro provide to help with compliance?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing with the regulations is that a regulation, it doesn't tell you how to do something. It just says what you can't do, right? So what we're trying to do is say, okay, how do we create an ecosystem for a company so that they are following the regulation, and then what tools can we bring to that company to facilitate that process? And then that's where the risk management frameworks come into play. So NIST, right? NIST comes up with their AI risk management framework. I think a lot of people on the call are probably familiar with the NIST cybersecurity framework. They've come out with the AI risk management framework. If you follow that, you're going to be in compliance with probably 80% of EU AI Act requirements, probably most of these laws, right? And then what Faro does, we make that digestible for the company. We say, okay, you want to comply with this law. These 10 or 20 components from these frameworks are what you need to implement. And then you can do it. If you have another law that you need to comply with, we can then take the work that you did on the first one and then map it to that. So you don't have to take every single one, go with a legal team and build it from scratch. What we're doing is we're taking all the different frameworks, all the different laws, all the different regulations, all the different tools as well that you might use to monitor AI, to test AI, and we're trying to understand the relationships between them. So we can come in and say, okay, you've done this for your cybersecurity policy. Okay, so that covers this portion of the AI regulation, and we connect to your OneTrust or whatever software you're using, or Jira, or wherever you have that information. We connect that, we pull it in, we map it to that part of the regulation. And this regulation actually requires that you have these policies and procedures. Rather than write them from scratch, why don't we take what ISO recommends, what NIST recommends, and you can write your procedures and your controls on the basis of that. And then Faro helps you implement that in your AI system by providing the API, by providing the plugins to your different technologies, and running those automated tests to make sure, okay, I have this procedure. My data science team is logging this information. I'm meeting quarterly with my stakeholders to understand the risks. I'm sending out this questionnaire twice a year, once a month, to make sure that people are, documenting how the system's used, and just kind of putting into motion all those tiny little things, and then boiling it up to the regulation level, to the risk level, so that you have that oversight.
And thanks for explaining that. And now, how does Faro stay up to date with all this changing regulations? I imagine there's a lot of reading, there's a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
meetings you're in, but what is
yeah.
what strategy and uh, strategies and processes do you use to keep up to date so that you can ensure organizations are up to date?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's definitely a lot of reading and a lot of work. Stuff's coming very quickly. I've been fortunate to have developed a lot of very strong relationships and partnerships with law firms, AI consultants, policy experts. So, but before it usually gets to Faro, we've taken the time to make sure, okay, it's gone through that layer of experts, right? And what we're saying is, okay, we're that SaaS version of that layer of experts, bringing in the understanding of the policies. So we keep up on it. We have a very flexible system. So when a new regulation comes out, when a new compliance framework comes out, a new impact assessment comes out, say, okay, now we have the tools to map that in quickly and efficiently. What we rely on our network for is to say, okay, what's of note? How should a company understand and interpret this, so that if somebody is using Claro and they have a question about it, that we have in our documentation an answer for them, or if they have a really complex use case, we can say, hey, we know these AI consultants, these AI auditors, we have an alliance with them, we can put you in touch with them. That's same goes for implementation support. which is why I'm on this podcast, right? So that's we're very into having that strong network because that's how you stay ahead of such a fluid and dynamic ecosystem.
And if you have any advice for companies regarding like managing compliance across geographies, what would it be? What would you tell them?
Yeah, going back a little bit to something I said earlier, I think you have to manage the infrastructure and the culture that you put in place around data privacy and protection, and then say, how do I um, augment that to work with AI? Because it's not going to cover 100% of it, but a lot of that structure that you've put into your organization, the teams, the technologies, the hooks, that's going to be useful when looking at AI risk and AI regulation. So I would say start there. And then, I mean, of course, looking into the tools and technologies or consultants that you can leverage to make that process easier. Fairo was built because, AI risk is not just traditional IT risk. It's sort of this mix of product risk, use case risk. It has certain qualitative elements of it that you don't always see when you're doing a traditional cybersecurity analysis, right? So looking at a company like ours, or I'll even say one of our competitors, I mean, you have to think about the whole picture here. You need to take the infrastructure you have and how do I just give it that extra 20, 30% to work with the AI regulations and be willing to embrace the cultural shift that will come if you want to grow to have a strategic reliance on AI in your roadmap.
And then you mentioned a little bit, and this is one of the core values of Faro, the importance of collaborating between legal and tech teams in managing AI regulations. How important
Yeah.
is that in when
Yeah.
you're facing AI and your AI implementation strategy and compliance?
More important than ever before. I think we're now, with AI, we're putting more trust in technology than we ever have. And with that brings more risks. If you don't have that deep collaboration between the legal team, between the stakeholder, between the technology team, you're gonna be in trouble, frankly. I mean, it's gonna be very hard, I think, for you to control the outcomes of how your AI system is used. It's I'll give a statistic that's pretty sobering considering the amount of money that's being invested in AI. But this was in the Harvard Business Review, December last year. 85% of AI projects fail.
Hmm.
They don't provide value to the business. Even with that high number, we're still investing lots of money in this because I know we believe that this technology will provide value over time. And, for all those 85 that fail, 15% created incredible value for businesses. So how do we get a part of that when we think about, all right, the AI technology is now sufficiently advanced that I'm interested in applying it to my organization to stay competitive? You have to bring all those stakeholders together, the legal team, the tech, and the development team, the end user, get that alignment and then say, all right, let's start putting this into practice, getting the policies, getting us and check in with each other regularly. It's the only way to do it.
So, what does the future hold for AI regulations, and how should companies prepare for that?
I think there's going to be a lot of stuff on reporting, on transparency, and then sort of liability. Like I was saying earlier, we don't have as much of the legal precedent going through the courts. Once that gets set, the sort of chain of command or the chain of accountability is going to be more clear. When an AI system makes a decision that has an adverse impact, somebody is injured, who sort of has to uh, be responsible for that? That's still not 100% clear in many use cases, but in the next few years, it's going to begin to get a lot more clear. So I would say that we will start to have that accountability structure, that legal precedent built around the existing laws and regulations. We'll see more regulations requiring reporting, requiring transparency, and also putting in that clear accountability structure and what the fines are going to be if people are not complying. So I think people have an idea of what they need to do. A lot of AI governance right now is voluntary. It's going to move to involuntary, and there's going to be very clear guidance on what to do, and then clear guidance on what happens if you don't adhere to those guidelines.
Well, thank you for sharing your insights on AI, how companies can implement their AI strategies, become compliant, future trends, government regulation. It's been enlightening to hear from you today, your insights. Thanks for taking the time to share with your audience. And for it's been a pleasure to have you today in this event. Thank you, George.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
And one more time, if they want to get a hold of a demo, speak to you, get your advice on their AI strategy, on regulation, on compliance, how can they reach out to you, George?
Absolutely. You just go to Fairo.ai and you can find a demo right there and information about our product. And you can find me on LinkedIn as George Chamoun.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. Until next time.